Alright, so this video is following on from the trailer video, moving into the flooring a little bit. So the way I set up the floor, I briefly mentioned about laying out some joists and just mirroring the pattern of the trailer itself. And then we laid on the plywood, which is the marine grade ply, which is for the bottom. We laid that on top. Then I got a couple friends over and we flipped the floor. At the time I was ready to stuff it full of insulation and then lay on the top. So we made sure that all happened in a dry spell of days. Made sure the weather was right for us because we didn't want to get any moisture inside the floor. So we flipped the floor, put the rigid insulation in to fill it up, and then used a 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywood sheets, which I designed the best fit pattern using SketchUp, and worked around with that for a little while trying to figure that out, and yeah, basically made it so that we could create a floor with the least amount of waste. So that's how we now have, this is the main subfloor, I guess. We haven't put any flooring on yet. I'm not sure what we're going to use for that, but that's pretty much how I made the floor. I've already mentioned the bolts that have attached the floor, every other cross beam from the trailer. And additionally to that, I'm going to be adding these as well. So this is an HDU number 5, HDU 5. It's a Simpson strong tie. And as you can see, there's one right here. Basically, it attaches to the stud. It comes with the bolts for that attachment. And then you'll have to buy the additional bolts that you want to send down through the floor. So it basically goes through the sill plate of the wall, in through the floor. Now the floor has, underneath that, obviously there's the plywood, and then there's the floor structure. So there's a 2x4 on its side, and then a 2x4 on the bottom, the marine ply on the bottom to create the floor structure. So the bolt has to go through all of those things. So it's about 5 or 7 inches, I can't quite remember, adding all those things up. Plus there's a little bracket which I'll get a little closer look at right now. So there's about an inch bracket. So what I did, I went and grabbed some 9-inch bolts. I actually used a 1/2 inch drill bit. This was the only size they had. It didn't go any bigger. I wanted to use 5/8, but they just had a 1/2 inch. So I drilled straight through the floor. I actually measured exactly how far from each corner it was, so I knew exactly where it was going to come out on the bottom, so it didn't come out in a weird place. Made sure it got a good distance into the steel frame of the trailer, and that it wasn't going to come out on a cross joist or in some weird place. So I needed to make sure that where I wanted to locate these was in the right spot. Now the reason these are important, in my opinion, is that it adds a lot of rigidity, and it really will bolt your house down to the trailer. And I can't imagine really anything more important than the house being securely fitted to the trailer, especially if you're planning on moving it. If you're just going to leave it in one place, like no big deal. But if you are going to plan on moving it, definitely would recommend getting these. They're not cheap, but it's worth it. I've got 6 of them, 2 for the front, 2 for the back, and 2 for the middle, just to add some real strength and support. So let's take a closer look here at it in place. Okay, so I've put the bolt already through here. A little dark in here, but you can get the idea. So the long coach bolt goes all the way through. There's actually about 1.5 inches to 2 inches hanging out at the bottom, and the Simpson strong tie comes with all the bolts to go through to fasten it to the stud. So it's well and truly secure. That goes all the way through, outside, through the steel of the trailer. I only have like a small couple mils flange that goes through, but it's going to go through halfway down the trailer. I've got another one here, then I'll have one at the very end as well. So yeah, this is a full strength support. They do come in different lengths and whatnot, but this is the 5. So it's a little shorter. I think it means 5 from the bottom to where the first bolt is here. So that seems to measure 5 inches, but I don't know how their naming convention works. But definitely important. Get some strong ties to affix your house to the trailer, and yeah, you should be good to go. So just one other piece of advice when drilling out these holes. When you reach the steel of the trailer, you want to get some kind of lube in there. So any kind of oil is fine, even if you just got some veggie oil or whatever. Pop it in the hole so that it doesn't cause your drill bit to overheat and dull. It just keeps a bit of moisture in there. And don't use water because it could rust later on. So just put some oil down that hole or on the end of your drill bit whilst you're drilling out that steel. Takes a bit of drilling, especially if you've got thick or 2 pieces to go through. It's going to take you some time, but I was kind of lucky because it's just a short, small, narrow flange for me, so it wasn't too hard. But this was the test one. I've drilled 2 more so far, and let's show you how I did it on the other ones. Okay, so that is pretty much it with attaching the strong tie to the studs. Drilled right through, used some oil in there just to keep it lubed. It's an expensive drill bit, so you know you want to protect that drill bit. So I used some oil to make sure that kept lubed, and then just hammered it through. It's a 1/2 inch drill bit, so it's a 1/2 inch lag bolt, 9 inches long. I could have maybe got away with an 8 inch one. There is quite a chunk hanging out underneath, but that's okay. I'd rather have too much than not enough to get the bolt on. And so because the stud, there's only just the one stud here, and the bolts that go through the strong tie are longer than the thickness of this stud, I added an extra piece of wood here. It adds a bit more support, a bit more secure, plus you're not having to deal with the screws coming out the other side of here. Could catch your hand and injure yourself and whatnot, so I just thought I'd add this extra piece. And so that's now attached. I'm going to go and attach these bolts and washer to the underside. I decided to get one of these guys, which is like a spring-loaded washer. And that'll just add a bit of extra support underneath. So if we are in transit here, the nut's not going to work itself loose underneath. So I just decided to get one of these washers for underneath, just to make sure that that's going to hold on. So let's go and put that on, and then I'm going to finish all the rest of them. There's only 3 more to do, so that's my job for the morning. Okay, so here's the bolt poking out the other side. You see I've added the washer on here and the bolt. Now there's a slight problem because this bolt, because of that angle I talked about, it was a little too close to the edge of the trailer here, so I couldn't quite get the bolt and washer on. I had to just knock the bolt back through a little bit till it got to the top, then put the washer and bolt back on and just turn it to pull the bolt back through. But this bolt is no way coming off. Because this bolt's so close to here, so the nut is even if it works itself loose, it can't actually drop off. But yeah, just bear that in mind when you're fixing your bolts through. Like, make sure it's going to come out with enough room on either side to attach the bolt. So we're good here. I just have a socket wrench to tighten this down.